For the really big decisions, the major and significant decisions that we have, we are invited and encouraged to actually discern. Discernment is kind of a spiritual process with which we can make decisions. St. Ignatius made suggestions about how we can go through discernment. He suggested that we should have 7 different attitudes going into decision making. And so this is an important check on ourselves when we're making really major and significant decisions, or even some smaller ones. Are we going into these decisions with the right attitude? Here's the first: openness. We should have openness. We must approach the decision in question, the decision we're trying to make, with an open mind and an open heart. We can't find God's will for us if we enter into decision making with a preconditioned outcome based on our own self-will, self-needs, biases, or what Ignatius calls attachments. That's an attitude of, I've already got my mind made up, so don't confuse me with the facts. Attachments refer to the areas in our lives where we limit freedom and put conditions on a decision. An example is, I'll go to college anywhere as long as it is within a day's drive to my parents' home and my friends. Openness. Second one, generosity. To enter into a decision process with such openness requires a generous spirit with which we, with a bigger heart, put no conditions on what God might be calling us to do. That's like writing God a signed blank check and letting God fill out the amount and the content of the check. A generous person would do this. Courage. If we're going to have openness and generosity, that requires courage. Because God might be asking us and inviting us to do something difficult, challenging, even risky. It takes courage to give up control and trusting that and putting all those decisions in God's hands while seeking God's will over our own. There's no telling what God might be calling us to do, whether it might be a religious vocation, like a priest or sister, or it might be being married to a larger family, okay? We're talking big decisions here, but you need to have courage in terms of acting out some even smaller decisions, like how to handle a bullying situation or turning away from alcohol and drugs, that kind of stuff. Courage, openness, generosity, courage. And the next one is called, he refers to it as interior freedom, being free on the inside. To make a prayerful, generous, courageous decision requires some freedom. Ignatius describes 3 types of people and their differing approaches to decision making. The first type is all talk and no action. That kind of person's got lots of good intentions, but is distracted by their own busyness and let inconsequential things get in the way of what they really need and want to do, and gets in the way of God's will for them. All talk, no action. Second type is one person who does everything but the one thing necessary. These people may do all sorts of good things in their life, but they don't face a central issue about what God's calling them to. They are, in fact, putting conditions on what God can call them to. They'll do good things as long as it doesn't ask too much of them, especially demand a total commitment. An example could be, I will enter into any career as long as it supports me in an upper middle class lifestyle. That would preclude a lot of options that God might be calling us to. The third type of person is truly free. Their whole and deepest desire is to do whatever God's will is for them with no conditions attached. That's the attitude necessary to authentically find and follow God's will for us. The fifth one is a habit of prayerful reflection on one's own experience. If we are trying to understand the will of God, we've got to listen. We've got to be able to hear what God is calling us to. The sixth one is getting your priorities straight. So, if serving God, our Lord and Creator, is the ultimate goal of our lives, then everything else in life must be put in a lower position in terms of decision making about that. That means such things as opportunities, experiences, and relationships are to be valued and chosen only insofar as they contribute to the ultimate goal in life, and reject that stuff that defers us from the goal. And then finally, the last one is not confusing the ends with the means. Ignatius comments, it becomes obvious how easy it is for me to forget such a simple truth as the end and goal of my whole existence when I consider the manner in which my choices are made. One of the examples of confusing ends with means is that a person first chooses to make a lot of money and be successful, and then afterwards may look to how they might serve God with charity and other kinds of stuff. The end is to serve the Lord. Now, this seems like a whole bunch of heavy stuff. It seems like a whole bunch of major, challenging stuff that we're just talking about friendships. We're just talking about love and dating. Yeah, but, I mean, if you are going to be making good decisions, then, you really have got to be open and generous and courageous and be free. Okay? And, make your decisions about relationships and love and dating within prayer that reflect that your priorities are straight and that you're not confusing the ends with the means. Because lots of times in love and dating, that can get end relationships. There's so much stuff that if we just keep focused on where we could be and where we should be, that makes a difference. That makes a difference. So we're inviting you to consider those and think about those. This is a larger, bigger, heavier topics. I get it. Okay. And this is also stuff that you just don't want to do on your own. I know that gut instinct says, hey, I'm making decisions for me, and these are about me, and no one else needs to be involved. Well, we've already talked about that. People are always going to be involved. And so we're going to invite you to start figuring out and planning how you might engage other people into your decision making.